The mission had been clear from the beginning. Earth had sent a group of diplomats, scientists, and peacekeepers to a distant galaxy to meet with the Zerthians, a race of highly advanced aliens. They were supposed to discuss peace, trade, and cooperation, hopeful that these powerful beings would be open to collaboration with humanity. The humans had no idea that the moment they set foot on the Zerthian ship, they were walking into a carefully laid trap. It all started when their ship, the Vanguard, entered the Zerthian star system. The human crew had been briefed on the Zerthians' technology, advanced ships capable of manipulating gravity, AI systems that could predict and outthink human strategies, and weapons so powerful they could obliterate entire planets. But none of that mattered to the humans. They were there to negotiate, to bring peace. They believed diplomacy could prevail over any threat. As the Vanguard approached the Zerthian flagship, a massive vessel that glowed with an eerie, otherworldly energy, the crew felt a sense of unease. The ship was beautiful, elegant and imposing, but there was something about it that felt wrong. The atmosphere aboard the Vanguard grew tense as the docking procedures began. The humans were about to meet their hosts, but the dread they felt was palpable. "Everything seems fine," Captain James Bonner muttered under his breath as he gazed at the dark silhouette of the Zerthian ship from the observation deck. Bonner, a seasoned soldier who had led numerous missions, had seen his fair share of strange and hostile species. But something about the Zerthians made his gut twist. He could sense danger, but it was too late to turn back now. The docking bay doors opened, and the humans were escorted into the heart of the Zerthian ship. They were greeted not with the friendly handshakes and gestures of peace they had hoped for, but by cold, calculating eyes. The Zerthians were tall, their pale, almost translucent skin giving them an ethereal appearance. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, betraying their deep intelligence and a sense of superiority that radiated from them. Before the humans could speak, the Zerthian leader, Prime Commander Zorith, addressed them with a voice that was both smooth and chilling. "You have come to negotiate. But we do not need negotiation. You are here because we have allowed you to be." The humans froze, their senses tingling with the realization that they had been outmaneuvered from the very start. Zorith's words were not a welcome, but a declaration of dominance. Captain Bonner's mind raced. He had been trained to handle confrontations, to stay calm under pressure, but this was different. They were in the heart of enemy territory, surrounded by a species whose power far exceeded anything humanity had ever encountered. Then, without warning, the entire ship went dark. The lights flickered before going out entirely, leaving them in eerie silence. Panic began to spread among the crew as emergency systems kicked in, but there was no communication, no sign of what had just happened. Captain Bonner signaled for his team to remain calm, but inside, he was already preparing for the worst. Moments later, a loud thud echoed through the ship as an unknown force hit them. The Vanguard shuddered violently, sending the crew tumbling. Alarms blared, signaling an incoming attack. The humans were unprepared for the speed and ferocity of the Zerthian assault. "Get to the escape pods." Bonner barked, grabbing the arm of his communications officer. But before they could move, the ship's hull opened up like a predator's jaws. Alien forces stormed in, Zerthian soldiers with weapons that pulsed with deadly energy. The humans barely had time to react. A quick and brutal firefight ensued. Humans fired back with their weapons, but they were outmatched. The Zerthians' advanced technology made their guns seem like mere toys in comparison. For every shot the humans fired, the Zerthians retaliated with deadly precision, their force fields deflecting bullets, their weapons tearing through the humans' armor like it was paper. One by one, the humans were overwhelmed, taken down by the Zerthians' superior strength and speed. Bonner fought fiercely, taking down a few Zerthian soldiers with his bare hands, but it was clear, this battle was not winnable. The humans were outclassed, and no amount of training or weapons could change that fact. They had walked right into the trap, and now, they were prisoners. The remaining crew was captured, shackled, and herded onto a different part of the ship. Their captors showed no signs of mercy. They were marched down a long corridor, past alien soldiers and intimidating, highly guarded areas. The ship's interior was cold and metallic, with glowing panels on the walls and floors. It felt more like a tomb than a place of living. As the humans were shoved into their cells, the reality of their situation sank in. This is it, Bonner thought, his mind racing. We're trapped. But even as despair began to creep in, Captain Bonner refused to let go of hope. His mind, trained for impossible situations, began calculating every possible option for escape. He knew that the Zerthians were cruel, but they had made one fatal mistake, underestimating the resolve of humanity. As he paced his cell, Bonner's thoughts turned to his team, the brave men and women who had followed him into this nightmare. They were all trained soldiers, experts in their fields, and above all, survivors. They wouldn't give up. He wouldn't give up. They would find a way to escape, to turn the tables on the Zerthians. Outside their cells, the Zerthians discussed their plans. They were going to keep the humans in captivity and subject them to cruel experiments. The aliens wanted to learn everything about human technology and psychology, using the prisoners as nothing more than test subjects. They would break the humans, or so they thought. In the dim light of the prison, Bonner's mind was already working. The Zerthians had made a serious mistake. They had locked them in cells, but they had no idea what kind of soldiers they had captured. Earth's finest, the best of humanity, didn't break. They fought back. There was a long silence as the humans sat in their cells, staring into the void, waiting. The uncertainty was suffocating. Would they ever get out? Would anyone come for them? But the thought of giving up was unimaginable. Captain Bonner clenched his fists, determination lighting up his eyes. The Zerthians might have trapped them, but they hadn't broken them. Not yet. And as the minutes passed, that one truth burned brightly in Bonner's heart. The hope for freedom wasn't gone. The Zerthians had underestimated them, and they would pay the price for that mistake. The first step to their survival had been taken, they had not surrendered. And now, with every passing moment, the plan for their escape began to take shape in Captain Bonner's mind. They would fight back. They would escape. And when they did, the Zerthians would regret ever crossing humanity. The Zerthians had underestimated the humans from the very beginning. With their technologically superior weapons, gravity-defying ships, and near-invincible shields, they believed that Earth's best and brightest would be no match for them. To the Zerthians, humans were just another primitive species, capable of little more than self-destruction. They saw themselves as the dominant race in the galaxy, and the humans' capture was merely another testament to their power. The humans, however, were a different breed. Captain Bonner and his team had been trained for situations like this. They weren't just soldiers, they were survivors. Their minds were sharp, their instincts honed, and their resolve unbreakable. The Zerthians had trapped them, but they had not defeated them. And it would take more than advanced technology to crush humanity's spirit. The Zerthians' overconfidence became their greatest weakness. They believed that by simply holding the humans in captivity, they could extract valuable information from them, data on Earth's technology, strategies, and weaknesses. But what the Zerthians failed to grasp was that humanity had never been about raw strength or superior technology. Humanity thrived on ingenuity, teamwork, and an unyielding will to survive. And this would be the key to their escape. In the cold, dim-lit cells of the Zerthian ship, Captain Bonner paced, his mind working overtime. The rest of his team, though physically exhausted, had not lost their focus. They gathered in whispered conversations, discussing every possible escape plan they could think of. Bonner knew that the longer they remained imprisoned, the weaker they would become, both mentally and physically. The Zerthians were patient, but the humans couldn't afford to be. "We've been through worse," Bonner muttered to himself as he stared at the alien technology around him. "We can get out of this. We just need time, and a plan." His team, his family, had been through countless missions together. They had seen battles that seemed unwinnable, and yet they had always found a way to turn the tide. Now, the stakes were higher than ever, and the weight of their survival lay on Bonner's shoulders. But even in the face of this overwhelming adversity, he refused to break. There was something inside him, something deep and primal, that told him they would survive. They would fight. And they would win. As the hours passed, the humans' emotional bonds grew stronger. Each day that passed without word from the outside world reminded them of the friends they had lost and the ones they still had to protect. The sound of footsteps echoing down the hallways, the occasional guard patrolling outside their cells, it all served as a reminder that the Zerthians were not just their captors, they were also their executioners. The prisoners had nothing left but each other, and this shared sense of loss and determination fueled their resolve. Private Sarah Cole, one of Bonner's closest soldiers, was the first to break the silence in their cell. "Do you think anyone's coming for us?" she asked, her voice quiet but filled with worry. Her face, usually confident and sharp, now wore the unmistakable mark of fear. Bonner turned to her, offering a reassuring smile, though his own heart felt heavy. "If anyone's coming for us, it's us," he said firmly. "We'll get out of here, Sarah. We just need to be smart about it." The others nodded in agreement, even though the doubt lingered in their eyes. They were facing a foe unlike anything they had ever encountered, and every day in captivity felt like a lifetime. But despite the odds, they were determined to survive. Meanwhile, the Zerthians carried on with their cruel plans. They spent hours studying the human prisoners, testing their physical and mental limits with various experiments. They wanted to know everything: how the humans survived, what made them so resilient, and how their technology worked. The Zerthians believed they could break them. They believed that all it would take was time and pressure, and the humans would crumble. But the Zerthians had no idea just how strong humanity's spirit truly was. The prisoners were not giving in. They didn't care about the experiments. They didn't care about the isolation. They were soldiers, and their duty wasn't to submit. Their duty was to survive, and to fight back. Captain Bonner was the first to spot the flaw in the Zerthians' plan. They were too focused on extracting information from the humans, too absorbed in their experiments, to notice the subtle signs of rebellion that were taking place under their noses. The humans had already begun to strategize, to plan, and to work together to find weaknesses in their captors' security. Bonner and his team had carefully observed the ship's layout during the brief moments when they were allowed outside their cells. They had studied the guards' patrol patterns, noted the areas with the least security, and looked for any opportunity to escape. Bonner's training had taught him to think several steps ahead, and he could already see how they could turn the tables. The Zerthians, with all their technology and advanced tactics, still made one fatal mistake: they underestimated their prisoners. They saw the humans as weak, as fragile creatures who would break under the pressure. They did not understand the strength of a species that had endured wars, disasters, and countless struggles just to survive. The Zerthians saw the humans as the prey, but they didn't know that the prey was about to fight back. It wasn't just about brute force, it was about using their environment, exploiting the Zerthians' overconfidence, and most importantly, working together. Captain Bonner knew that without unity, they stood no chance. The human prisoners, even though they had lost comrades in the initial attack, were still a team. And as long as they had each other, there was hope. But time was running out. The Zerthians were growing impatient with their experiments. They wanted results. They wanted to extract every piece of useful information from the humans as quickly as possible. And with each passing moment, Bonner's team was running out of time. They needed to act, soon. Before the Zerthians discovered that their prisoners were anything but helpless. As the days wore on, the emotional toll of their captivity became harder to bear. Every day without word from Earth made it seem more and more like a rescue would never come. Yet Bonner refused to let despair take hold. He had seen his team face the impossible before, and they had always triumphed. They would do it again. No matter what it took. In the dark, silent corridors of the Zerthian ship, the humans were preparing for their moment. The Zerthians thought they had won, but they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The trap had been set, but now it was time for the humans to turn it around and show the Zerthians that no amount of technology, no matter how advanced, could ever defeat the human spirit. The Zerthians' overconfidence would be their downfall. The days passed slowly for the human prisoners, and with each passing hour, their sense of hope grew dimmer. The weight of their situation was becoming too much to bear. They were held captive by the Zerthians, a technologically superior alien race that seemed unstoppable. Despite their best efforts, Captain Bonner and his team couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness. They had trained for battles, for danger, but this was something they hadn't prepared for. Being imprisoned, cut off from everything they knew, left them with nothing but time and the uncertainty of their fate. They could feel their will to fight beginning to wane. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, something unexpected happened. The faintest hum vibrated through the walls of their cell, followed by a slight, almost imperceptible shift in the air. Bonner immediately straightened, his instincts kicking in. He turned to his team, his eyes scanning their faces for any sign that they'd noticed. They had all learned to be hyper-aware of their surroundings in their line of work, and Bonner could see it in their eyes. They had felt it too. "Stay sharp," Bonner whispered, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "Something's happening." The prisoners held their breath. For a moment, the cell was completely silent, save for the low hum that seemed to grow louder by the second. Then, the noise stopped, just as suddenly as it had started. Bonner's mind raced as he tried to make sense of it. Was it a mistake? A glitch? Or was it something else? And then, without warning, the air in the cell seemed to shimmer, and a faint, almost invisible outline of something appeared. A shape, large, but barely noticeable. Bonner squinted, his eyes narrowing as he focused. He could see it now, a cloaked figure, moving silently. His heart skipped a beat. He knew what this meant. Earth was sending help. The soldiers of Earth had found a way to infiltrate the Zerthian ship, using cloaking devices and cutting-edge AI technology to remain hidden. The prisoners, still stunned by the sudden appearance of their rescuers, exchanged confused and hopeful glances. They had no idea how it was happening, but they could feel it. Earth had not forgotten them. They were coming. Bonner motioned for his team to stay quiet as they crouched low, watching as the cloaked soldiers worked with precision. The Earth soldiers, equipped with advanced armor and gravity weapons, silently navigated through the corridors of the Zerthian ship. Their movements were fluid, almost ghost-like, as if they had become one with the shadows. Even the AI robots, with their sleek, humanoid designs, seemed to blend into the environment, their presence barely noticeable. The prisoners had no time to waste. This was their chance, their only chance to escape, and they couldn't afford to blow it. Bonner made eye contact with each of his team members, his gaze firm and unyielding. "Stay close, stay quiet. We're getting out of here." The Earth soldiers had one goal, to disable the Zerthian defenses and get the human prisoners to safety. The mission was risky, too risky, perhaps, but it was their only hope. The team moved like a well-oiled machine, each step calculated, each decision made in an instant. The cloaking devices rendered them invisible to the Zerthians' detection systems, and the AI robots used their superior processing power to hack into the ship's security systems, opening doors and disabling surveillance cameras. But despite their best efforts, the Zerthians soon realized that something was wrong. Their advanced sensors began to pick up strange disturbances, the faintest traces of interference in their systems. It wasn't enough to reveal the Earth soldiers, but it was enough to cause concern. The Zerthians quickly mobilized, sending their forces to investigate. Bonner and his team, along with their Earth rescuers, knew they had to move quickly. They had to strike before the Zerthians could organize a counterattack. The tension in the air was palpable as they moved down a narrow hallway, the faintest sound of footsteps echoing behind them. The team's hearts raced. Time was running out. The first skirmish erupted when a group of Zerthian guards rounded the corner. The Earth soldiers, still cloaked, wasted no time. They activated their gravity weapons, and with a single pulse, the guards were knocked off their feet, tumbling helplessly to the ground. The AI robots deployed their advanced combat systems, and within seconds, the Zerthians were incapacitated, their weapons rendered useless by the precision of the attack. It was a flawless victory, until the Zerthians retaliated. Realizing that their ship was under attack, they activated their heavy weaponry. The ship's internal alarms blared, and the corridors lit up with the blinding glow of energy blasts. The human prisoners and their rescuers were caught in the middle of an all-out battle, a fierce confrontation that pitted Earth's ingenuity against the overwhelming firepower of the Zerthians. Bonner and his team, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that surprised even the Zerthians. They had no choice but to survive. Their every move was calculated, their every action a desperate attempt to stay alive. The Earth soldiers, using their advanced cloaking technology, darted in and out of sight, taking down guards with ruthless efficiency. The battle escalated quickly. The ship's gravity systems malfunctioned as the Earth soldiers used their gravity weapons to shift the balance of the fight. Zerthians were sent floating helplessly, their weapons unable to aim properly in the altered environment. Bonner and his team fought side by side with the Earth soldiers, their movements becoming more synchronized with each passing second. Together, they were unstoppable. But the Zerthians were not easily beaten. They retaliated with everything they had: energy shields, plasma cannons, and heavy artillery. The corridors became war zones, with explosions shaking the ship to its core. The human prisoners, now armed with stolen Zerthian weapons, fought fiercely, their adrenaline pumping as they pushed forward, determined to make it out alive. Just when it seemed like the battle would consume them all, the Earth soldiers activated their final weapon, a cloaking pulse that completely rendered their team invisible. The Zerthians, momentarily blinded by the sudden disappearance, were caught off guard. The prisoners, led by Bonner, used this window of opportunity to make their move. They ran, hard and fast, through the hallways of the Zerthian ship, with the Earth soldiers covering their retreat. The ship was a labyrinth, its twists and turns disorienting, but the team pressed on, their only goal now to escape. The feeling of freedom was within reach, and nothing would stop them. As they reached the ship's escape pods, Bonner's heart raced. They were so close, but they were not out of danger yet. The Zerthians were coming. The soldiers from Earth had done their part, but now it was up to Bonner and his team to make it out alive. With a final push, Bonner led the charge into the escape pods. The doors slammed shut behind them just as the Zerthians arrived, their weapons drawn, but it was too late. The pods launched, and with a burst of energy, they shot off into space, leaving the Zerthian ship far behind. As the humans looked out into the void, they knew they had survived against impossible odds. They had fought for their lives, and now they had a chance at freedom. But the battle was far from over. They had escaped the trap, but the war was just beginning. The escape had been a success. Bonner and his team had managed to break free from the clutches of the Zerthians, with the help of the Earth soldiers and their advanced technology. As they drifted further away from the Zerthian ship, leaving behind the chaos and destruction they had caused, there was a momentary sense of relief. They had done the impossible, they had survived. But that relief didn't last long. The truth of their situation quickly set in. They were no longer in the safety of the ship. They were in the vast emptiness of space, vulnerable and exposed. And to make matters worse, they were not alone. The Zerthians had already begun their pursuit. They were relentless, and their advanced technology gave them an edge that made escape feel almost impossible. As the human escape pods continued their journey through the vastness of space, Bonner's heart heavy with worry, he knew they needed to prepare for what was coming next. But just as they thought they might have a chance at survival, a sudden message crackled through the communication system. It was from Earth, an emergency transmission. Bonner's pulse quickened as he listened, but the message brought no good news. Some of the soldiers who had participated in the rescue mission hadn't made it out alive. The transmission confirmed that several members of the Earth team had sacrificed their lives to give the others a chance to escape. Bonner's eyes narrowed as the weight of the news settled in. The loss was devastating. Not only had they lost comrades who had fought bravely beside them, but they also knew that the mission was far from over. Earth's forces were not large enough to launch a full-scale assault against the Zerthians, and the cost of further losses could be catastrophic. Captain Bonner, though clearly shaken by the news, didn't let the sorrow show. He was their leader, and it was his responsibility to keep morale high. The soldiers around him, exhausted and on edge, needed someone to keep them grounded. They needed hope. "We didn't survive just to die here," Bonner said firmly, looking each of his team members in the eye. "We're not just fighting for our lives. We're fighting for humanity's future. For the memory of those who gave their lives for us, for the future of our children. We're doing this for everyone who ever believed in us." His words rang out in the cramped escape pod, filling the soldiers with a renewed sense of purpose. The air in the pod felt heavier now, not because of the danger outside, but because of the immense responsibility that weighed on them. They weren't just a handful of humans anymore, they were the last hope of humanity itself. If they failed, humanity's fight for survival would be over before it even began. The situation was grim, and they knew that the final assault was coming. The Zerthians wouldn't let them escape easily. The aliens were ruthless, and their advanced weapons could wipe them out in seconds. But Bonner knew that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their advanced technology or their superior firepower, it was their spirit. The courage to keep fighting even when everything seemed lost. And that was something the Zerthians couldn't understand. As they moved deeper into enemy territory, Bonner's team began to make their final preparations. They knew that this was going to be a fight for survival. The Zerthians were closing in, and their final assault would be their last chance to turn the tide. But Bonner couldn't help but feel the weight of the sacrifice hanging over them. Their friends, their fellow soldiers, those who had fought so bravely, were gone. Their memories would fuel their fight, but the loss was a heavy burden. One soldier, Private Lewis, spoke up. "Captain, what if we don't make it? What if we fail?" Bonner looked at him with a steely gaze. "Failure is not an option. We've already lost too much. But we're not giving up. Not ever." The final assault came faster than anyone had anticipated. The communication systems went silent for a moment, but when they came back online, the Zerthians were already in pursuit. The enemy fleet was massive, and they were closing in on the human escape pods with terrifying speed. The human soldiers braced for impact as their last stand approached. Bonner's mind raced as he issued orders to his team. They had to hold their ground and buy time. Time for what, exactly? Bonner wasn't sure, but he knew that they had to do everything they could to survive. Every second counted. The Zerthians' weapons were powerful, and their fleet was vast. But the humans had something the Zerthians couldn't replicate: their heart, their determination, and their will to survive. The Zerthians, confident in their superior weapons and technology, launched a relentless attack. Their massive warships loomed in the distance, firing waves of plasma blasts at the small human pods. The humans, though outgunned and outnumbered, fought back with everything they had. The escape pods maneuvered through the firestorm, dodging blasts and returning fire. The human soldiers, despite their exhaustion, fought with a fury born from the realization that this was their final stand. They didn't just want to survive, they wanted to win. They wanted to ensure that the sacrifices of their fallen comrades meant something. Captain Bonner led his team with unwavering resolve. He watched as soldiers around him fought valiantly, even as they were surrounded by overwhelming odds. It was clear that this was a battle they couldn't win without sacrifice. But each time the Zerthians got too close, the humans retaliated with fierce precision, their attacks fueled by the memory of those who had fallen. In the midst of the chaos, Bonner's thoughts were with those who had died. He remembered the faces of the soldiers who had given their lives for this mission. It wasn't just their sacrifice that drove him forward, it was the need to honor their memory. They had given everything for this moment, and he wasn't about to let their deaths be in vain. The final moments were a blur of flashing lights and deafening explosions. The Zerthians were closing in on all sides, but the humans refused to give up. They fought with everything they had, pushing their weapons to the limit and using every trick in the book to stay one step ahead. Bonner's heart pounded in his chest as the final wave of attack came. And then, just as it seemed that all hope was lost, a massive explosion rocked the Zerthian fleet. It was the Earth fleet, arriving in the nick of time to deliver a devastating counterattack. The Zerthians had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now they were paying the price. The Earth fleet, with its advanced weapons and reinforcements, began to obliterate the Zerthian ships one by one. Bonner's team, battered but not broken, watched in awe as the tide of battle shifted in their favor. The Zerthian ships began to retreat, their forces scattering as Earth's reinforcements tore through them. The humans had done it. They had survived, against all odds. But the victory didn't come without its cost. The loss of their comrades weighed heavily on Bonner and his team. They had fought for their lives, for the memory of those who had given everything. And as the battle ended and silence filled the air, Bonner knew that their journey was far from over. The Zerthians had been defeated, but the war was not yet won. The fight for humanity's survival was just beginning, the final battle was upon them. For Captain Bonner and his team, this was the moment they had been waiting for. The stakes had never been higher, this was humanity's last chance to prove that they could stand against the overwhelming might of the Zerthian Empire. Every soldier in Bonner's team felt the weight of the moment. They had faced death countless times, but now, in this very battle, they had a real shot at winning. Their escape had been a miracle, but survival in space was no longer enough. They needed to break the Zerthian stranglehold once and for all. Bonner stood at the front of his team, his face set in determination. Behind him, his soldiers prepared themselves for the challenge ahead. The Earth team was small, their numbers far fewer than the massive Zerthian fleet, but they had something the Zerthians lacked: unity, determination, and the will to fight for their survival. The Zerthians had underestimated humans before, but this time, they would see that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The battle started with a deafening roar as the human soldiers, aided by advanced technology, surged forward. Cloaking devices, AI-controlled robots, and gravity manipulation weapons were deployed with precision. The Zerthian fleet, despite its size and strength, was now facing an enemy it had never fully understood. Humans fighting for their lives, for their families, for their planet. As the human forces engaged the Zerthians, the aliens' once confident demeanor started to crack. Their defensive systems, which had once seemed impenetrable, began to falter. The AI robots, fast and relentless, worked in perfect sync with the human soldiers. They hacked into the Zerthian fleet systems, disabling the ship's communication networks and defense shields. With every passing moment, the Zerthians' power seemed to drain away, as their advanced weapons systems were systematically taken offline. It was the beginning of the end. Captain Bonner's voice crackled through the comms, steady and unyielding. "Push forward, team. We have them on the ropes now. Keep the pressure up." The humans knew that this was the moment they had to capitalize on. They couldn't let up, they had to strike with everything they had. Gravity weapons fired down from the human ships, targeting the massive Zerthian warships and rendering their shields useless. The AI robots, using their advanced programming, worked quickly to disable key components of the Zerthian fleet. Bonner's team worked with flawless coordination, hitting targets with pinpoint precision, their attacks perfectly synchronized. Every move felt like a calculated dance, every action driving them closer to victory. But even as the Zerthians' defenses began to crumble, they were not giving up without a fight. The alien fleet launched a desperate counterattack, firing powerful plasma beams at the human ships. The energy from the beams lit up the sky like lightning, and the force of the explosions rocked the human ships. For a moment, it seemed as though the humans might falter. However, Bonner's team didn't hesitate. The human soldiers, despite the overwhelming odds, fought back with fierce determination. The memory of their fallen comrades fueled their every move. Each explosion, each blast, was a reminder of the sacrifices made by their brothers and sisters in arms. Every time they saw a ship fall or a soldier lose their life, they only fought harder. The battle raged on, and it became clear that the Zerthians were starting to lose control. The once proud fleet, which had been so confident of its superiority, was now retreating under the relentless onslaught of human ingenuity and determination. The Zerthians had no answer for the humans' adaptability. The battle that had seemed impossible just hours earlier was slowly turning in favor of Earth. The alien leadership, watching from their flagship, began to realize the scale of their mistake. They had underestimated humanity, thinking that their advanced technology and military tactics would be enough to crush them. But as they saw their ships being destroyed one by one, as they saw their soldiers retreating, their confidence began to erode. The Zerthians were beginning to understand that they were not fighting a weak, helpless species. They were fighting an enemy that could adapt, improvise, and never give up. In the midst of the chaos, Bonner's voice echoed through the comms again, more urgent now. "We've broken through their defenses. Target their flagship. If we take it out, the rest of their fleet will fall apart." The team reacted instantly, moving with precision to intercept the Zerthian flagship. The AI robots, now fully integrated with the human soldiers, disabled the alien ship's communication systems, rendering it unable to call for reinforcements. The human soldiers, following Bonner's lead, attacked with a ferocity that the Zerthians had never seen before. The Zerthian flagship, once a symbol of their unstoppable power, was now struggling to hold on. Its weapons fired wildly, desperately trying to stop the human assault, but it was too late. The Earth team's coordinated attacks overwhelmed the flagship's defenses. With one final, devastating blow, the flagship exploded in a massive fireball, its debris scattering across the battlefield. As the flagship fell, the morale of the Zerthian fleet shattered. Ships began to retreat, their commanders in disarray. The human forces, though battered, pressed on, using the opening to destroy the remaining enemy ships. The Zerthians, realizing they had lost, began to pull back. They had been defeated, not by superior technology, but by something far more powerful, human ingenuity and resilience. On the ground, Bonner's team stood victorious, though they were exhausted and covered in the dust of battle. The mission was far from over, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, they could breathe. The Zerthians had been stopped, their pride shattered, and the future of humanity had been secured, for now. As Bonner looked out at the battlefield, the destruction around him, he thought of all those who had fallen to make this victory possible. The sacrifices, the lives lost, it was all for this moment. Humanity had stood against the odds and won. They had proved that no matter how advanced an enemy might be, the human spirit could never be broken. The victory was bittersweet. It was a triumph, but it came at a high cost. The team had lost many of their comrades along the way, and the scars of the battle would last long after the fires had gone out. But as Bonner looked at the faces of the surviving soldiers, he knew that this was just the beginning. The Zerthians had been defeated, but there were other threats on the horizon. Other battles to fight, other enemies to face. But Bonner and his team had learned one crucial lesson: no matter what came next, they would face it together. They had proven that humanity was not just an underdog species, they were a force to be reckoned with. And as the team prepared for whatever came next, they knew that their fight for survival was far from over. But now, they had hope. The final showdown had arrived, and for Captain Bonner and his team, this was the moment they had been waiting for. After everything they had been through, the brutal battles, the losses, the sacrifices, now was the time to finish what they had started. The Zerthian Empire, which had once believed itself invincible, now stood on the brink of defeat. The tables had turned, and it was humanity's turn to prove that they were not just an underdog species but a force capable of shaping the future. Captain Bonner stood at the front of his team, his eyes scanning the chaotic battlefield ahead. The Zerthian fleet was in disarray, their advanced ships vulnerable and crumbling under the relentless pressure from the humans. Bonner's team had broken through the enemy's defense systems, disabling their most powerful weapons, and now, with the Zerthians on the defensive, it was time to finish the job. The human soldiers, battered but determined, pressed forward with everything they had. Their cloaking devices kept them hidden from enemy radar, while their gravity weapons turned the tide of battle in their favor. The Zerthians, once so confident in their technological superiority, were now realizing that they had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, innovate, and fight for survival. And now, they were paying the price. On the ground, Bonner's soldiers fought with a sense of purpose that went beyond the battle itself. They were not just fighting for their own survival, they were fighting for their families, their planet, and the future of humanity. Each blow they struck, each enemy they brought down, was a step closer to ending this war and securing a better future. But it wasn't just their determination that fueled their success. It was also their unity. The human forces, despite their smaller numbers, fought together as one. They coordinated their attacks flawlessly, using their AI robots to infiltrate the Zerthian fleet systems and disable their weapons. The gravity weapons were used with surgical precision, dismantling the enemy's most powerful ships and leaving them vulnerable to further attacks. Captain Bonner's voice echoed through the comms, steady and resolute. "Keep pushing forward. We've got them now, but we finish this for good. Don't let up, not now." The Zerthians were reeling, their once proud fleet crumbling before their eyes. As the human forces continued their relentless assault, the Zerthian leadership realized that their time had run out. They had been confident that their advanced technology would guarantee victory, but they had underestimated the human spirit. The Zerthians had believed that the humans were weak, inferior, a species to be crushed without a second thought. But now, faced with their imminent defeat, they could no longer deny the truth. In the heart of the battle, Captain Bonner and his team made their move toward the Zerthian command ship, their final target. The alien vessel, once the symbol of the Zerthian Empire's might, was now the last line of defense. If they could take it down, the entire Zerthian fleet would crumble, and humanity would have secured its victory. As Bonner and his team closed in on the command ship, the Zerthian leadership made a desperate attempt to turn the tide. Their remaining warships rallied around the command ship, launching a last-ditch effort to protect their leader and preserve their empire. The space around the command ship erupted in a frenzy of explosions, plasma beams, and chaos. But the humans did not falter. They pushed forward with unwavering determination, cutting through the Zerthian defenses. The AI robots hacked into the command ship systems, disabling its shields and weapons, while the human soldiers stormed the ship, fighting their way through the corridors and decks. The Zerthians fought back fiercely, but it was clear that their time was running out. In a final act of desperation, the Zerthian leaders attempted to flee. They realized they had lost, everything they had worked for, everything they had built, was crumbling before their eyes. But it was too late. The humans were relentless, and the Zerthian leadership could no longer escape the consequences of their arrogance. As the command ship's defenses fell, Captain Bonner and his team reached the heart of the ship. They found the Zerthian leaders, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. The once mighty rulers of the Zerthian Empire now stood defeated, their fate sealed by the strength and unity of humanity. Bonner's voice rang out across the comms. "Surrender now. You've lost. Your empire is over. We're taking you down." The Zerthian leaders, who had once believed that humanity was nothing more than an insignificant race, now had no choice but to accept their defeat. With their fleet in ruins and their command ship destroyed, they surrendered, their pride shattered. The Zerthians had come to understand the hard way that humanity was not a species to be taken lightly. The victory was hard-earned, but it was sweet. The Earth's rescue mission had been a success, and the prisoners who had been held captive by the Zerthians were finally freed. The humans had not only defeated the invaders, they had done so with the kind of courage, ingenuity, and unity that the Zerthians had never seen before. The message was clear: humanity would never be broken. No matter how advanced the enemy, no matter how powerful the technology, humanity would always find a way to fight back. And in the end, they would prevail. In the aftermath of the battle, the surviving soldiers gathered together, looking out at the debris-filled battlefield. The Zerthians were gone, their fleet shattered, and the future of humanity was secure, for now. But even in victory, Bonner knew that the war was not truly over. There would be other battles to fight, other enemies to face. The universe was vast, and humanity had only just begun to make its mark. But as Bonner looked at his team, he knew that they had proven something important. They had shown that no matter the odds, no matter the challenges, humanity could rise to the occasion. They could face the darkness and emerge victorious. They had defeated an empire that had once believed it was unstoppable. As the team prepared for the next phase of their journey, they carried with them the strength of their victory and the lessons they had learned. They had fought for their survival, and they had won. Now, they would rebuild, stronger than ever. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, humanity had hope. With the Zerthian threat vanquished, Bonner and his team looked toward the horizon, knowing that the universe was still full of challenges. But they were no longer just survivors, they were victors. And as long as they stood together, there was nothing they couldn't face. Humanity had proven that no matter what the future held, they would never give up. And with that, they marched forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next.